So good afternoon again. My name is Jen Lennon, Marketing Coordinator at the Stelter Company, and thank you for joining us for our webinar today, Say Yes to the Gift, a panel of industry experts that's moderated by Lynn Gaumer, Senior Gift Planning Consultant for the Stelter Company. And I'll get back to introducing Lynn in just a minute, but first I'd like to say just a few words about Stelter's webinar series. As an expert advocate for plan giving, we are committed to providing innovative solutions and educational opportunities for the nonprofit industry. And we pride ourselves in being a bridge builder for this community. And we're happy to host this free webinar today, which connects you with experts from across the country to assist you in maximizing the revenue across your development portfolio. Today is the fifth webinar in our 2024 series. We have a great slate of presenters still lined up this year. We have Pamela Jones-Davidson, John Kendrick will join us, and Meg Klein, just to name a few. So look for your personal invitations in your inbox as each webinar gets closer. And if you missed any of the previous webinars, excuse me, you can view the recordings on our webinar website page at stelter.com/webinars. So now back to today's webinar. I'm honored to introduce our moderator, Lynn Gaumer. Lynn is a senior gift planning consultant for the Stelter Company. She assists Stelter clients with technical questions related to planned giving. She conducts in-person and virtual training for our nonprofit partners, their donors, and their board members, and she ensures that the content that we create is legally accurate. Lynn is a past chair of the National Association of Gift Planners Leadership Institute. She's a past president and current board member of the Mid-Iowa Planned Giving Council, and she was just elected to the 2025 Board of Directors for the National Association of Gift Planners. So welcome, Lynn. We're so excited for the panel today. I'm going to pass it off to you.
Thanks, Jen, so much. I am thrilled to be hosting this webinar today. I have with me a panel of experts. I think there's over 100 years of experience between the four of us. So please ask your questions, and we're hoping to have some very informative discussions today. I first want to introduce you to Bryan. Bryan, you should be familiar with Bryan. He is the president and founder of Charitable Solutions, LLC. They help nonprofits in a variety of ways, but for today's discussion, they specialize in non-cash asset receipt and liquidation. So Bryan's one of your go-to people and Charitable Solutions to handle gifts of non-cash assets. He created the National Gift Annuity Foundation, the largest national independent gift annuity platform. If you haven't seen Bryan speak, put it on your to-do list. He's an awesome presenter. I guarantee you will learn something and you will laugh as well. He's just a dynamic presenter. He's author of Charitable Gifts of Non-Cash Assets. He serves on a variety of boards, including he did serve on the National Association of Charitable Gift Planners Board as well. My next one, let's see, I'm trying to, oops, Rebecca. Trying to get here. Okay, Rebecca is my next panelist. Rebecca comes to us from Oregon Community Foundation. She is the senior complex gift officer, and she serves as a subject matter expert on all types of giving vehicles, including those with funded with non-cash assets. She is the member of both the California and Oregon Bar Association. She holds an LLM in tax law from the University of Florida. She also served on the board of directors for the National Association of Charitable Gift Planners and was an awesome conference chair at the Reno CGP conference in 2022. She's currently serving as a board member and conference chair for the Estate Planning Council of Portland's 2025 annual seminar. And finally, we have John Syverson. John and I have known each other for really good over a decade. He is in the Des Moines metro area. He's the vice president of gift annuity services with the National Gift Annuity Foundation. He has over 45 years of experience helping people integrate philanthropy into their financial and estate plans. He is a member of the National Association of Charitable Gift Planners, ACGA, and past president of Mid-Iowa Planned Giving Council. And he holds a master's of financial services from the American College. So with that, those are our panelists. So thank you again, and I'm looking forward to a great discussion with each of them. First, let's talk about our agenda. I'm going to first be talking with Rebecca and Bryan about the importance of non-cash gift assets and how they, like community foundations and organizations like Charitable Solutions, can help you accept non-cash gift assets by partnering with them. And we'll go through that. And then we're going to go on to the second half of the presentation will be about charitable gift annuities. And there's so many organizations that either don't accept it or can't accept it because of their gift acceptance policies. But now's the time to accept gift annuities. And I'll tell you why. And there's also some organizations out there that maybe will accept gift annuities, but they'll only accept cash or maybe just stock. And I think John's going to talk about a little bit about maybe you can maybe broaden that if you partner with like National Gift Annuity Foundation. Then we'll be going on some next steps. I always like to give homework, like I say, of things you can do after this presentations. And then we'll have about 15 minutes to get your questions answered. We're going to start with those that were previously submitted during the registration process, and then go on to some of the ones that were submitted online here. So I just wanted to lay the foundation before I bring on Bryan and Rebecca about the importance of non-cash assets. I want you to take a look at this pie chart. And you see this is from the wealthy, top 20%. And you see that, 24% is in business equity and real estate, and 26% is in principal residence, and 8%, just 8% liquid assets. That's like your checking account. 23% in pensions, 19% in financial securities or like investment accounts. But this isn't just for the high net worth. I want you to think of your own wealth at this time. Does it look similar to this? How much is in your checking versus what your house is worth or what your 401k is valued at? So think about that when you're talking with donors and thinking about asking for non-cash assets over cash. And the time is now. Use non-cash assets to boost your plan giving program. First of all, the Great Wealth Transfer is underway. Many of us have heard about this. An estimated 84 trillion it will be transferred to Gen X and millennial children in the coming years, and an estimated 12 trillion of that will be transferred to nonprofits through charitable bequests. So there's a lot of money going to be exchanging hands. And if you focus on non-cash assets, according to Dr. Russell James, your organization will grow 6 times faster than those that are focused on cash gifts. And here's some more data for you. An estimated 90% of wealth is held in non-cash assets. That's similar to what the pie chart just said. Yet only 14% of nonprofits received non-cash contributions in 2023. And let's talk about demographics here. An estimated 50% of millennials have never written a check. I will include my kids in this one too, because one time I asked them about a check and they're like, I don't know how to do that. So when we talk about just cash gifts, that check writing is probably going to go away in the future. So we need to think about other ways that your organization can accept gifts of non-cash assets. So I wanted to talk a little bit, so that kind of lays the groundwork, but I also want to talk about my role at Stelter. There's so many times in my role as senior gift planning consultant here where I hear about, oh, I'd love to talk about real estate, but we don't accept real estate. Well, take that real estate section off our website because we don't handle real estate. We don't want to promote gift annuities because we're not registered. I hear that all the time in my role here at Stelter. I hear it. I also give a number of plan giving training sessions, and I hear it as well there. You can talk about appreciated property, but only talk about stocks. We don't accept any business interests, real estate, or any tangible personal property or anything like that. So my goal is here today is to say, yes, you can. Yes, you can if you maybe just partner with a third party to accept maybe complex assets or non-cash assets. So let me bring my panelists up. So I'm going to talk with Rebecca and Bryan first here. And so I kind of want to just create a visual for those you on the line. And let's just say you're a gift planning officer and you're talking with a donor and you're thinking that maybe it's just going to be a very simple, maybe cash gift or, maybe publicly traded securities. And the conversation turns to, let's say, real estate or a business interest or something like that. And you're like, well, wait a minute. I wonder what our gift acceptance policy says, or maybe we don't accept that. So before you say no, here are some ideas. So let's start with Rebecca. Rebecca, so if a gift planner was in that situation where they had a donor and this donor came with them, let's say about real estate. Let's talk about real estate a little bit. And how would either your organization be able to help that nonprofit and donor, or like how do community foundations in general, like across the board, would be able to help the donor and the nonprofit?
Yeah, absolutely. And I will say, so, I think OCF policies are indicative of a lot of community foundations, but community foundations are definitely going to vary. We vary so much in size and resource availability. So I definitely would encourage everyone to check in with your local community foundation and see what that's going to look like and what resources they have available. But I think, OCF certainly and a lot of other community foundations would be able to accept real estate and other non-cash assets and basically to go into a fund. So when we're working with a nonprofit that brings us a donor with a non-cash asset like this with real estate, what we would probably be looking at is what's called a designated fund, where the donor would create the fund with us and name the charity as the designated recipient of all distributions from that fund. And then we could go through the process of, due diligence and accepting the real estate and all those things. And then that real estate would be sold and the money would go into this fund that then would be designated for that specific nonprofit.
Okay. And Bryan, how would that be different from your organization? So, this nonprofit doesn't maybe accept real estate. They call up Charitable Solutions. How would Charitable Solutions work with this nonprofit and donor?
Sure, sure. So we do maybe a couple things. One, obviously, just as Rebecca alluded to, sort of doing the due diligence to say, is this even going to work at all? Is this a primary residence or is the cost basis high? So we're sort of assuming that it's a qualified gift, if you will. So we would work similarly to that of a community foundation. That's certainly my background, and I have a lot of clients in that space generally. However, we only take in illiquid or complex gifts. We bring those into a donor advised fund. And then once liquid, we never manage anything once it's liquid. So then it's basically being granted out, most always back to the donor, to the charity that the donor had originally offered the gift to. And then so we're really just functioning as a risk manager pass-through donor advised fund. And then the 30 days after we receive settlement funds are when we make the final grant out, less than the expenses or our fee and so on. So it's much more of a pass-through transactional than sort of a longer term relationship or management structure.
Okay. And so we talked a little bit about real estate, but there's other complex gifts like business interests, right? Can each of you share an example of a challenging transaction you facilitated and how you helped the nonprofit navigate those complexities? Rebecca, we'll start with you.
Sure. We do a lot of business interests, but actually the challenging one that comes to mind is a real estate gift where we had a nonprofit that's one of our endowment partners, so one of our agency fund holders, reach out to us. And they had a donor with a piece of real estate they were interested in gifting to them. We sat down with them. We, as a community foundation, one of the things we try to do is really never insert ourselves when not necessary. So our mission is to improve the lives of people in our community, and the nonprofits that are serving the people in that community are certainly, part of our mission is to serve them as well. So I sat down with the member of the board and the director of development to talk through whether it would make sense for them to actually accept this real estate and whether we were necessary. And in that conversation, it came out that it was a, really lovely, lovely, it was currently being used as a rental property, but it was a single family home in a really nice neighborhood, super marketable. It just happened to be one of those times in, Oregon real estate, where things were just flying off the shelves. So in having this conversation, they decided they were interested in just accepting it themselves. So I gave them some resources, some information, they kind of went on their way. One of the things I had alerted them to and mentioned to them, knowing how small they were and that this house was worth about $500,000, was that they really needed to confirm with their tax preparer that there wasn't a potential tipping issue. Tipping is when a gift is so large that it could cause a public charity to stop passing the public support test and get knocked into private foundation status. So it's something that charities certainly want to avoid. Their tax preparer gave them the green light. They moved forward. Well, I got a call a few weeks later, an absolute panic. The tax preparer had reached back out and figured out that he was wrong the first time, and there was a potential tipping issue here, and they were not going to be able to accept this gift. So that was an example where there was this big challenge that they faced, where we were able to step in, complete the due diligence process working with them, and the proceeds, 500,000 all ended up in this. And again, it sold immediately. So it was a pretty easy gift in a lot of ways, other than this tipping issue for them. But yeah, that was an example of a challenge where we were able to serve as a resource and help that partner.
Oh, that's a great story. Thank you. Bryan, I'm sure you have a lot of stories, but go ahead. What about for you?
It may not be as good as that one, Rebecca. That's a good story. I might take that one, by the way. That might become my story. In any event, so maybe a couple of things. One, I think to take maybe just a 30-second step back and what Lynn mentioned, I will tell you, because we get many referrals from charities, the amount of crypto referrals that we get is crazy. Then sort of the next level, depending if crypto's sort of hitting record highs. The second one is around real estate. So I bet, wild guess, probably 70–80% of all of the questions or inquiries we get sort of around crypto or real estate in some way. And that may sound like, oh, that kind of makes sense. It actually makes no sense. So the last two of the last 3 years, we've raised over 1.1 billion. 90% of those in every year are business interest gifts. It is not crypto. Real estate, the most we've ever raised in 21 years of doing this, is 10% overall. It is business interest gifts, period. And they are jumbo. So our average, at least last year, was 6.8 million. I know Rebecca had very similar sort of experience there, other community foundations as well. So the point is, that's where all the gifts are. That's where all the wealth is, and they're big. So if you didn't do anything when you leave here today on your Stelter website, put business interest gifts like in all caps, all bold, with lots of neon lights around it. That's where all the wealth is. So I've had all kind of crazy ones. We do about roughly one of these per day, roughly. So the one that is still a little bit twingy, it worked, thank God. But we got a call from a great community foundation, one of our clients in the Midwest. And it was on last week, Thursday. And they said, hey, we got this S Corp. It's running super fast. Got to have the whole thing done by Monday being yesterday, 2 days ago. And so we're like, okay, so went through that process. It was an ESOP transaction. So they sort of had an outside independent trustee. Whole thing had to be done on Monday. So basically spent the weekend with our team, et cetera, et cetera. We're able to get that through. And so the point is, a lot of what we do may be complex. A lot of it much more is around just sort of getting it done really fast. Because most donors, clients, unfortunately, don't give typically a lot of runway for their advisors, where they'll think about it sort of at the last second when it looks like, yeah, wait a minute, we actually might sell now. And then so that's like, quick panic to determine what they can do from a charitable perspective. But that's basically it. I think last year, again, maybe 100, 150 or so, maybe less than that, 125 business interest gifts. Everyone had a different story. Could be an investor. We do a lot of these, interestingly, for registered investment advisors, so financial planners. And there's this huge graying, this transfer of wealth, as Lynn, you alluded to. But in terms of our S Corp transactions specifically, we do C Corp, LLC, LP. But S Corp specifically, it's about probably 20% of our transactions in the last 3 years have been the registered investment advisors themselves. So they're selling to the junior partner, they're selling to another investment practice, but before they do that, then they're making that transfer over. So the merger acquisition activity, financing round activity, ESOP transactions, any of those things that can create some level of liquidity prior, of course, to there being a legally binding agreement. That's when they need to be able to consider that if they're already charitably inclined in some way. It's by far the bulk of their assets, as you mentioned, Lynn, but to be able to obviously move some of that over into a charitable bucket at their community foundation, at their university, wherever that happens to be, has very much sort of increased the last really 3 to 4 years in particular.
And do you see that trend continuing with the baby
Yes.
boomers aging out? And so that was
Yes.
one of my questions today is the trend, what do you see as trends? So you're saying business interests.
Yes. Yeah. And I hate to say it was a trend and now it's like a mega trend. If that's even, it's always been 80-90% of what we've done. Up until last year, at least for our activity, we had 100% growth for like 4 years, which is code for doubling every year for 4 years. And it's exactly what you said. Interest rates are certainly higher now, but think about it. You've got the baby boomers all retiring en masse. And I always say, what are they retiring from? That nobody talks about that piece. They're retiring from their registered investment advisory practice that they've spent 25 years building up, or their welding contracting business, or their real estate, whatever it is, they're retiring from something, which means they're exiting. A gigantic nugget is every community I have been in Oregon or I don't care where I am, the most charitable inclined people always are real estate wealth and private business wealth. Always. And they're giving cash, which drives me insane. That's why I have no hair. The point is that they're basically retiring at the very time that interest rates generally are very, very low. Up until a year ago, we had tons of liquidity everywhere where people were sort of bidding on that business before they even put it on the market. And we're still seeing some of that, to be sure. So it's a perfect storm, Lynn. And I think the other thing I'll mention quickly, but I think it's so important. We started this in 2003. So for like first 4 years, people were like, you can do that? That's weird. Seriously? I mean, so that was like 4 years. And so now we talk with advisors, let's say 10 years ago, and it was, yeah, I heard some webinar, maybe that Stelter put on, or I heard some webinar that I was getting CE for, and somebody mentioned this like as a case study thing. And then it was, wait, I heard somebody present locally. And then it became, yeah, I think somebody in our firm did one of these. And last year was, I did one. So more and more advisors, this is becoming the norm. Like, oh, hasn't everybody done this all the time? No, this was, much sort of, the top 1% of advisors. It is really, really sort of becoming part of the planning process, and that donors, if they'll keep it on their websites that Stelter provides them as an option, will then be thinking, oh, I am getting ready to sell real estate. I'm on this great, our website for my favorite charity. I see this as even an option. I never even thought about that. I'll give them a call. So I think all these things sort of colliding, never mind Dr. James' unbelievable, research, sort of proving out the fact that these are the assets that help charities grow the most at the very time that people who are the most charitably inclined own most of these assets. So it's just perfect. So I think it will definitely continue, if not accelerate.
Yeah. Is that what you're seeing too, Rebecca?
I think that we probably see a little different segments, right? The biggest trend we're seeing is actually charitable remainder trusts. So, we usually do 2 to 4 a year. We've done 8 so far this year. We closed one this week, so we're at 9, and then we're closing one next week, so we'll be at 10. So it's just really, there's lots of reasons, but we've experienced a huge increase in that. The other one, which is not technically non-cash, so I'm going to be cheating a little, but it's a different category kind of than the cash and securities, is just the retirement accounts. Those continue to just be huge piece of our donors' wealth, continually something we're getting asked about. The testamentary CRTs in replace of the Stretch IRA continues to just be something we're spending a lot of time working with attorneys on, and a lot of attorneys just love them and are doing them, several a year. So that's the most popular trends we're seeing.
What are they funding the CRTs with?
So the current ones, the one I'm doing next week is a couple that invested in Apple really early, and they're retiring and they've got millions of dollars in Apple stock, and they're deciding it's time to diversify a little and want to have this, tax planning component to it. The one that closed this week was a rental property, which is always one of the primary things, those people with rental properties who are ready to sell it or not manage it anymore. Yeah, it's all been either securities or real estate.
Okay. What, so Rebecca, I'll stay with you. What are some of the common challenges nonprofits face when working with maybe a community foundation? What kind of bumps in the road have you experienced where it's like, okay, we've got this situation. We need to do A, B, and C, to get over it. What kind of things challenges that a nonprofit might face with working with community foundations?
I mean, I think the biggest challenge is just bringing in another person into the mix and somebody that's not from your organization, right? And so communication is really the key there. The reply all button is a challenge for a lot of people. Is a common theme I see in this, right? So especially a lot of our donors who we love and adore, will not keep everyone in the thread, and I'll find they just keep replying just to me. So just really making sure that we're keeping everyone involved and in all the threads and communicated really effectively is huge, and continuing to center that development person as the primary. So we just did a CRT with where it was a nonprofit that brought this donor to us. So for instance, when we opened the account and we had the DTC instructions for the donor ready to go, I sent it to the development person and said, here's the instructions. Would you like to share the good news? It's open and give this to them, or would you like me to? So just always making sure to center that development person and communicate and use that reply all, even when it's making sure you're adding people back in that have now been left off of that thread.
Okay. And Bryan?
I'm going to answer your question, but it may not be how you think. So, and this is being recorded, I know, so I'll be a little careful. So I think there are two things. One, I am too much probably on the entrepreneurial side. I get it. I worked for charities for 10 years. I get it. But what is challenging in terms of working with others, and my view from my perch, is that if I were running sort of a nonprofit in terms of development, whatever, my thought would be is, what is our risk tolerance? I know we're going to talk about some gift acceptance policies. And to be able to say, basically, if it comes in, it looks like this, we're totally comfortable. We're going to swallow that. We're in good shape. If it comes in, it looks like this, maybe it's 50-50. If it comes in and sort of looks like this, we really just don't want to be involved. It's so easy for me to say, consultant or whatever, like, that should be like a 30-minute process. It's more than that. But this becomes like months and months of discussion and this and that. To your point, Lynn, it's like, okay, we're not going to do gift annuities. Okay, fine. Find a community foundation, find some other group, find a faith-based foundation, find some other group that can do that. And I am daily frustrated by, we're just going to say no. It's like, oh my God, you've got a great donor, a great board member who wants to do great things to have impact with your organization. We're not going to spend 30 minutes and find some other. It drives me crazy. The flip side of that is that charities, not all charities, and none, I'm sure, on this webinar, but other charities love to do something I call getting ready to get ready. Oh my God. So it's like, okay, we don't want to market this through our website with Stelter. We don't want to have discussions with the donors because, oh my God, they could ask a question about, oh, well, tell me more about that. And then we all freak out and convulse on the ground. So we're not going to shake the bushes until we go through every permutation that anybody on our 12-person, development committee can come up with over the next 4 months. And we're going to discuss every single one of those permutations. And only when we get super comfortable with every single one of those paths will we then begin to market it. So they'll interview the community foundation. They'll sort of interview us. I'm being super bad here, but I've seen this for 21 years. Like, it's the same movie over and over and over. And then they will say something like, well, okay, so this is great. Now we're ready to market this maybe after, and this is not a joke, 12 months to 18 months is a pretty typical time frame for that. And then I'll be horrible again. How many of that original staff putting all that together are still there after 18 months? Maybe 2/3. Maybe. I'm being bad. That's true. So then when one actually comes up, they're frozen again because none of them were part of that original conversation. So to me, it's much more what I'd call almost internal goo of the organizations to be able to say, here's stuff we're comfortable in. Here's stuff that we can handle ourselves or get an outside consultant or attorney. Great. That's sort of value meal number A. Value meal number B are things that we might assess on a case-by-case basis. Here's our process for doing that. And value meal, C might be, here are the partners that we can use to be able to help capture these gifts, in essence, indirectly for us. There are lots of partners within this ecosystem that can do that. And now, literally tomorrow afternoon on my website, I can have the full menu that the most sophisticated Ivy League university has instantly. But I'm just being able to say, if it comes in looks like this, we handle it this way. Comes in like this, we handle it that way. That's me. I get it. I'm biased. I get it. But to me, Lynn, I can't tell you enough how many times we'll hear people say, oh yeah, this just never comes up because it's not on your website, because no one wants to bring it up. And somebody wrote it up 3 years ago, took it to the finance office, and then, we're never doing that again. I'm being bad, but that's true. So they just lock it down and go, yeah, our donors don't ask cash, cash, cash. While they're doing that, the ones who are focused on these non-cash areas are growing 6 times faster, just as you said, in terms of Dr. James' research. So to me, there's just this huge, huge chasm of disconnect between those that sort of can come up with what their triage system looks like, and those that just say, yeah, this all just seems too complicated or risky, or we don't want to involve other people. So we're just going to say no, not saying yes, saying no to our great donors wanting to do good things with good assets. So you can hear the frustration. I mean, like literally every day I have this conversation for 21 years. It would drive you crazy too. And so I think that really is what's holding, to me, the field back from being able to be much more engaged with these kind of conversations.
Yeah. And that's similar what, I've experienced at Stelter, we're not, take this out of the article because we don't handle that type of asset, or take this off our website. We don't want to promote that. So this is my way of trying to help nonprofits say yes. I'm going to end with a fun question, and then we're going to go on to gift annuities. But what has been the most unique asset your organization has ever accepted? Rebecca?
Well, I'm sure Bryan's going to have some amazing answers on this, so I hate to go in front of him, but we've actually done 2 really fun ones recently, just in the last year and a half or so. One is artwork, which is very rare. We don't do a lot of artwork, but we do have this one amazing donor who inherited this art collection, very valuable art collection from a man who was a art dealer in New York in the 70s and 80s. So, I mean, his collection is truly so fun. And we ended up giving us 3 paintings that went into Charitable Remainder Trust, valued over 20 million. One of them was a Basquiat. Like it was just super fun to get to see that kind of really amazing art and being used for charitable purposes. And some fun consequences of doing with CRT with it, which is kind of non-traditional, and he has no basis, so we didn't really get a deduction, which is a whole, I could do a whole presentation just on that one gift. And we also did some gold coins, which was fun, where one of our donors got a notice that they were closing his safe deposit box. Over the years, he'd been taking a couple of gold coins at a time, putting it in this box, and it was now almost $1 million of gold coins. He's kind of a frail older man, very sweet. But he said to me, he said, I'm not, going to go down there and, what am I going to pick up $1 million of gold coins in a suitcase and go into downtown Portland? So we were able to work with him. I did not get the Scrooge McDuck moment I was hoping for. They were very hermetically sealed. It was a little disappointing, but it was still a really fun gift to work on. And that was just a cool, some, challenging one to do.
And Bryan, I'm sure you have many stories.
Well, Rebecca says, we went down to the safe deposit. Were you the enforcer? Just say yes. I was the enforcer. I went down there. I had him. I was able to block everybody off. That'd be a good story.
Exactly.
So a couple real quick ones. So we worked on, very strangely, the Wall Street Bull. So charging bull number 1. So the bull on Wall Street. So it's the sculpture. Minnesota Vikings, when they saw this been a long time ago. I did a portion of the Minnesota Vikings. A lot of international property, which to me is very interesting. Hong Kong. We own a very large portion, strange portion of Belize, Panama, Costa Rica. So those things to me are quite interesting in terms of foreign either business interests or a lot of like carried interest, hedge funds, those kind of things. But I always come back and say, those are fun to talk about like during this session or on planes or whatever. But it's still the boring $2.5 million donation. That's the welding contractor. That's a C Corp. That's not fun to talk about, but that's 98% of the gifts are that kind of stuff. But yeah, definitely fun ones to talk about.
Okay. Well, thank you both. We are going to transition now over to gift annuities. Let me try to, There we go. So gift annuities is another gift vehicle that I routinely hear. We don't accept gift annuities. We are not registered in that state. Our donor is in California. We can't issue a gift annuity there. You know, we're elsewhere. Or, you know, I let's see, what else do I hear? I hear, oh, well, our CFO or board members, remember, you know, we had several gift annuities go underwater, so we will never accept them again. And we don't have the resources. That's another uh, feedback that I get from nonprofits is, you know, we don't have the resources to administer the gift annuities, to, you know, to issue the checks. And then the other, you know, talking about non-cash assets, well, we only accept gift annuities only with cash, but we don't accept them any other time. So I'm here to say, yes, you can. Again, yes, you can to the gift. And so on the panel now is going to be Rebecca and John. But I just want to lay out the foundation. You know, I'm hoping to get everyone, I think everyone knows what a gift annuity, but just want to make sure that we get everyone on board. This is just a little infographic on how it works. You know, a donor can give cash or appreciated property, you know, to fund a gift annuity in exchange based on typically ACGA rates. About 96% of charities uses rates suggested by the American Council of Gift Annuities. And then ultimately it goes to a charitable organization. So that's how generally it works. Hopefully you're familiar with that. But one of the reasons I'm bringing this here today is because of, look at these rates. These are the rates that are currently in effect. I don't know how long they will continue to be, but right now they're the highest in about 16 years. And when I hear feedback and are in discussions with leaders across the country, you know, gift annuities, they are doing more gift annuities now than they ever have been. Some because of these rates, some of it is demographic. Those baby boomers are aging. But if you're not offering gift annuities, again, I'm going to say yes, you can, because there are options for you to work with third parties. So let's talk with John and Rebecca about gift annuities. So Rebecca, we'll start with you. Let's set the stage again. You've got a nonprofit, either in your area, or let's take it national. You know, there's community foundations nationwide work and said, you know, I heard about this gift annuity where I can give, but I can also get a little bit something back. And the gift officer is thinking to themselves, we can't do that. Like, we're not set up, we're registered. Rebecca, how would you help this nonprofit?
Yeah. Well, you know, I do think that there's going to be a local element to a community foundation. That's going to be one of the biggest, probably, you know, differing things between John and myself and what we talk about. So, you know, a community foundation, because community gift annuities are regulated by state, probably will be limited somewhat in the states they can work in. But yeah, a lot of community foundations, ours included, do offer gift annuities as a way for our partners to use endowment building. So our program specifically, and many community foundation programs are, though again, each one can be different, is based around that endowment building for our partners. So our partners with endowment funds with OCF will often use these as tools for fundraising locally with their donors, to then have these additions, this pipeline over the years of it builds relationships, it creates that pipeline of gifts coming, and then it will get added to their endowment funds with the community foundation.
Okay, great. And John, I know that I've referred a lot of Stelter clients to the National Gift Annuity Foundation with great success. And so thank you for that. But can you tell me how would they partner? What would be like the initial steps if when I refer somebody, or they say after this webinar, like, okay, I'm going to call John, what would be the initial steps in helping that nonprofit with a gift annuity for a donor?
Yeah, very good, Lynn. Well, the typical first contact, they're saying, can I send my donors to you for a gift annuity? And the answer is technically, legally, yes, you could, but why would you want to? why don't we give you our materials so that we can host the gift annuity on our balance sheet? We take the fiduciary liability, all the administrative aspects of it, the legal liability to make payments to this donor who lives to 110. That's all on us, but we give you our materials for the application to work with the donor to get it set up. So you maintain the donor relationship. We want to serve as your back room. We don't want to become the front room, okay? So that means as far as the charity is concerned, the donor is interested in helping them. They're not interested in helping National Gift Annuity Foundation because, again, we're part of Bryan's Charitable Solutions Decomai process. It's a pass-through. We're in between the donor and the charity and try to stay in the back room as much as possible. And of course, it's really helpful though, because we're national, we're registered to offer gift annuities in all 50 states. So the charity has no registration requirements at all because we're the issuing charity. We receipt the donor, we make all the payments, we issue the 1099s at the end of the year to the donor. And then the developing charity is named in the contract, which is a 3-page agreement, that's all it is, as the remainder beneficiary. And you can't get in trouble being the remainder beneficiary. CFOs of nonprofits hate gift annuities, and I would too if I was a CFO. Why would I want to take in money that I can't spend, I can't use? I'm responsible for maintaining investment for the next 20 or 30 years, and I don't know if I'm going to get anything out of it because the donors tend to live too long that have these things. Why would I want to do that? So many finance teams and CFOs shut it down right there. And so I get on these calls with the CFO and the development people. The development people, they're all off the trap, and the CFO is frowning. We don't want to do it. And then when they find out that we do all that work for them and we take on the liability and all they have to do is endorse the check that we send out when the donor passes away for the residual value, they smile. They love it. And now they're going to support the development team. It's just fun. I'm just having a lot of fun with this. But compared to a community foundation, because we're national and we deal with a lot of national nonprofits who have donors all over the country, then we take care of all that the registration process, and there's a half a dozen states where it's an egregious process. It took us 2.5 years to get registered to offer gift annuities in California. And that was calling Sacramento once a week to bring our application to the top of the pile. Many California charities don't do gift annuities. It's too hard to get registered there, even though they're domiciled there. But the gift annuity has to be registered, the issuing charity has to be registered to offer gift annuities in the state where the donor lives, not where the charity lives. That's a common misconception. So that was a long-winded. What was the question again? It was really whatever it was.
Well, I just wanted you to go through the process of,
the process. Yeah, okay.
Yeah, and
so they call up and say, how do we do gift annuities to National Gift Annuity Foundation for our donors? I say, you give me a 1-hour Zoom call. At the end of that hour, you're ready to go. It is that simple.
Yeah.
Because all we do is educate you on how to use our forms and what our process is, and it's all listed out. We give them access to a particular website to do all that, and so the development people are still in control of the donor relationship and still in control of the process up to the time of actual issuance. Now, once the contract is issued, we make the payments, we do the 1099 reporting and so on, but then we report back to the issuing charity twice a year for their auditors as to what the FASB liability is and all that internal reporting that they have to do. We give them that information. So the bulk of the work done by the nonprofit is up front developing this interest in the gift annuity and getting it set up with their donor. And then they turn all the administration over to us.
Yeah, and I think that and it is very easy to do. But John, I know that you get this question often. What is the difference between administering the gift annuities and outsourcing them? I think you get that question quite a bit.
Yeah, but the question often comes from a charity that's got a half a dozen or 6, 12 or 15 gift annuities, and they're not happy with their service provider for the third-party administration. The charity is still on the hook for all the liability, all the things that the CFO hates is still on their books, okay? And they've outsourced the mechanics of it, who's going to make the payments, who's going to invest the money, and who's going to do the tax reporting. But at the end of the day, if that gift annuity contract goes under, it's not the third-party administrator that's going to make up the difference. It's the general operating fund of the issuing charity. That's why CFOs hate gift annuities. And so when people come to us and say, well, what would you charge to administer our gift annuity program that we already have started? And we said, nothing, we won't do it. Now, what we do occasionally is we'll do a complete risk analysis through our actuaries and take a look at whether we'll take over their total gift annuity program. They basically transfer it all to us, and now it's on our balance sheet, off their balance sheet. Now the CFO is happy again, and all they have to do is cash checks when donors die. But that doesn't happen very often. But there is a big difference, because with a turnkey program like we have, and I trust that Rebecca be the same way, your community foundation is the issuer of the gift annuity. The charity is only the beneficiary, and you can't get sued for being a beneficiary. So that's a big difference, and many people in the nonprofit world don't understand that. They think, I just want to get rid of all this paperwork. I don't want to do all the admin and so on. You can outsource that 6 weeks from Sunday. Many banks will do it, third-party administrators. There's tons of people that will do that for you for a fee, okay? But you still sit there with the obligation. When that gift annuitant lives to 110 and you're taking money out of your operating budget to keep making payments to them after the gift annuity contract is exhausted, that's where the problem comes in. That could take 15 to 20 years, but these are 15 to 20 to 30-year agreements. You have to think about that going forward, which is why the finance team really doesn't like these.
Yeah. So what you're telling me, John, just to recap for our audience, is that the nonprofit who doesn't issue gift annuities can work with National Gift Annuity Foundation. They maintain their donor relationships. So the gift is actually made to Gift Annuity Foundation,
Right,
correct?
We're the
Yep.
501c3 that is on the hook legally to make those payments for as long as that donor lives, even if we exhaust the account. That's
Yep.
our problem, not the Dan Charity's problem.
And then it's the Gift Annuity Foundation that takes care of the payments, takes care of any tax information that's required, invest the assets in between. And then now can the donor, so you're working with one nonprofit, but can the donor actually make multiple nonprofits as the beneficiary, or is it only with the nonprofit that you're working with?
In our case, that's really nonprofit and donor driven. We don't really care because we're the issuing nonprofit, and we're going to distribute the funds at the death of donor to whoever they designated in the application. Our application has room for 4 charities. 90% of the time, it's the singular charity that brought the donor to us. But occasionally, the donor will say, gee, and I'm going to do another gift annuity with my church and another one with the local Boys and Girls Club. Gee, but they don't do gift annuities. Can you do this for me? So we'll say, well, if you can put more money in, we'll split it 3 ways if you wish. We have no problem doing that because, again, we're just a pass-through. We're not the end charity. We're just a facilitator. So that's kind of a unique circumstance. Most big universities I know of will say, well, if you want to name your church along with our university, as long as you give us at least 50%, because we're doing all the work, we'll let you do the other 50% somewhere else. We don't even have a percentage requirement. We can do, I've done one for 6 different charities occasionally. Yeah, so that's easy for us because we're just a pass-through. We're just going to send the proceeds to whatever percent was designated by the donor when they set up the gift annuity to any charity that they was, as long as it's a 501c3.
Yeah.
As long as it's domestic too, but it has to be a domestic 501c3.
Right. And one of the questions that when I'm talking with Stelter clients about Gift Annuity Foundation, one question that comes up inevitably is, well, do we have to contract with Gift Annuity Foundation, and what are the fees? Or are we paying the fees? How does that work?
Well, that's a very common question. Everybody looks at us as a vendor. We're not a vendor. We're a nonprofit partner. And so there is no contract between us and the nonprofit. Doesn't need to be. You don't want to get into a vendor relationship with us because that increases your culpability and your liability if something goes wrong. We want to keep you out of that as a nonprofit. So your legal and finance department bless this thing instead of nix it. Okay. So the only thing that you're in agreement on is that you're the remainder beneficiary listed in each CGA contract. That's the only place your charity's name will appear. Okay. So therefore, there is no agreement. There's no annual retainer fee. There's no upfront cost. There's no back-end fee that we charge. We just simply live off a small percentage that comes out of the gift annuity contract assets on an annual basis, just like a mutual fund manager charges their fees. Very, very similar. And it does not affect the donor's income one iota. Their income is the gross amount contributed to the contract. $100,000 goes into a 75-year-old CGA at 7%, they're going to get $7,000 a year, regardless of the fees we're taking out. It's really eventually coming out of the residual value, which is going to be the same thing if you're doing true cost accounting, if you're the issuing charity yourself. It's
Yeah.
real easy. And you don't
What
have
are,
to put it in your budget as a line item because you don't ever send us a check.
yeah. And what are the minimums for national gift annuity? Minimum age and minimum amount?
We'll start making gift annuity payments as low as age 55, because we can manage that risk because of our size. Most charities want to make it 60 or 65, and I would too if I was small. And then our minimum contribution currently is 20,000. Should be higher, but it's 20,000. Our average size gift annuity is over 90,000, and it's growing. I've done several in the last couple of months, a couple 300,000. It's just amazing. Some are securities, some are cash, and of course, real estate keeps coming in because we're able to handle real estate gifts because we're part of the Charitable Solutions family, and they do the liquidation for us and dump it in the CGA, and we move on.
Okay, and that was actually leads up to my next question about non-cash gifts. So you talked about marketable securities and real estate. Rebecca, I'll go back to you. What types of assets do community foundations, maybe in general, or your organization, accept in exchange for a gift annuity?
So OCF policy is cash and publicly traded securities, but with the ability to make exceptions on a case-by-case basis. I, have worked with other community foundations that did do real estate. I had one client at my old job that even did the, what do they call it? Reverse mortgage. I'm blanking on the, but where you do the retained life estate for a CGA, which is, pretty rare. So yeah, you can, we would be open to potentially doing other assets, but there's a good chance we would actually probably kick that to National Gift Annuity Foundation. Unless the donor is very motivated to negotiate the rate. We're really trying to limit liability, and the dollar amount that we'd be at, where we'd be starting to talk about making an exception, starts to make me nervous because that annuity amount's so high, but the liability is going to be potentially really high. So again, each community foundation is going to be different in their tolerance for risk with these. One of the primary differences we're going to be is the remainder. Unlike non-cash gifts that we were talking about with Bryan, where it can go to a fund, that fund can be expendable or permanent. With charitable remainder trusts, up to half can go out and half has to remain as a fund at the community foundation for us. And that's a common policy, I think. With CGAs, 100% of the remainder does need to stay at the foundation, and that's because of that liability piece that we're taking on as part of these. But that fund can have multiple, charities named. So if it's through a program that a nonprofit is kind of running with us, right, then it's going to be for them, and we're not going to even bring up, it's going to be a designated fund or even to their endowment partner fund. But if it's through if a donor wants to also name other charities, as John was talking about, like their form, then the fund can also have other beneficiaries, or even be like an OCF discretionary fund where it's for arts or education, or a scholarship fund. So there's a lot of those types of options as well.
Okay, and John, I'll turn that over to you. Obviously, cash and marketable securities. You mentioned real estate. Anything else that you've worked with?
Yeah, in fact, one of my favorite gifts was a couple of years ago. I'm here in the Midwest, where Lynn is. And so what do they raise in Iowa, Lynn? They raise corn and old people. Well, I'm an old person, but they also have corn. And so when a farmer retires and he's got last year's corn in the bin that he hasn't sold, he already took all the tax deductions for all his input costs last year. When he sells that corn this year, that's all considered ordinary income to him. It's not a capital gain rate. It's all ordinary income with no offsetting deductions. They get killed on income tax in the year after they retire. So this donor talked to one of the charities that we work with, and they said, we've been working with another favorite local charity that has national connections for 9 months, and we'd like to fund a gift annuity with corn. And they fussed and fussed and fussed, and for 9 months they said, we can't figure out how to do it. So he went to his other charity that we happen to work with locally, and they said, can you do a gift annuity with corn? I said, yep. In 2 weeks, we had it up and down. We take the corn into an elevator and open an account in the name of National Gift Annuity Foundation. The donor puts the corn, those 45,000 bushels of corn. This is a $275,000 gift annuity. 45,000 bushels of corn go into our account. We immediately liquidate it, fund the gift annuity for $275,000. This guy was 80 years old. He was just elated. These devices solve problems for donors. That's what I love about them. I spent 40 years as a financial planner helping people solve problems. These charitable solutions are wonderful to help people solve problems. They just need to know about it. They need to be educated. You need to market to these people to know that these are even a possibility. So that was a fun one. But anything that Bryan at Decomai Foundation and Charitable Solutions will take the fund of gift annuity, because I have those guys do all the work anyway. We just put the money in the gift annuity when it's sold, and on we go. The unique part is it might take us 2-3 years to sell that asset, and we're equipped to start making gift annuity payments right away to the annuitant. That's unusual, but we're of enough size we can afford to do that, and we recover it when we finally sell the asset. So sometimes charities that even offer their own gift annuities will bring those cases to us on an as-needed basis. We work with several universities who are not registered in the 6 problem states. It's just too much of a hassle to get registered there for 1 or 2 alumni, so they use us on an individual basis for that. So we'll do 1 gift annuity every 10 years, or we'll do 1,000 a year, whatever they want.
And I would think that, you know, if a nonprofit is issuing gift annuities on their own and they do want a more complex asset like real estate, they would only be able to do a deferred gift annuity because there's going to be obviously time to sell that piece of real estate and things. But what you're telling me is that if they went with Gift Annuity Foundation, they actually could do them immediate if that's what the donor chose to do.
Well, yeah, and even beyond that, as Rebecca mentioned, we'll do a piece of property and do a retained life estate on a residence or a farm, and they get to live there, and we'll turn in the equity into an immediate gift annuity, and then we recover that 20-30 years later when they die or leave the farm. That's highly unusual, but we can connect a gift annuity to a retained life estate. That's a pretty neat deal. We're getting some traction on that in California. A lot of these Californians the property's gone up in value so much, they're able to take that equity, turn it into an income stream to help keep it up, and then get the tax deduction up front. So that's kind of an unusual thing that we can do on an as-needed basis. We can do 1 or we can do 1,000.
Yeah. Last question, quickly. Trends you're seeing in gift annuities and CGAs in conjunction with QCDs. Are you seeing lots of interest, Rebecca?
We have done 3.
Okay.
So there's a little bit. I always make sure and let them know that they should talk to their financial advisor. I know some financial advisors are saying it makes more sense to take the RMD and fund with another asset. So, but it's totally up to them. Some donors just hear this idea and love it and just want to do it and move forward, and it's simple to them. So there's a little bit of activity out there, not quite as much as I think some of the news headlines when this act came out implied there would be.
Okay. Are you seeing a lot, John?
Totally
QCDs?
opposite. Yeah, we didn't expect a whole lot. Bryan didn't expect much at all. In 2023, the first year that this was offered, we issued 150 new gift annuities. 50 were with QCD money. 50. Oh. What's happening is that the Kiplinger and the Wall Street Journal are writing articles about this, and it gets people's attention. Their financial advisors and their CPAs are saying, you need to consider this. Your RMDs are getting too big, da-da-da-da-da. Go talk to your local charity and see if they'll do that for you, okay? They theoretically could do it in the CRT, but no one's going to manage the CRT for 53 grand, period, okay? It's not going to happen, okay? So what's left is a charitable gift annuity. It was part of the legislation. Secure Act 2.0 put this all together for us. And but it's limited to 50,000 initially, and then indexed for inflation this year, 53,000. But the deal is sometimes it's just a great plan giving discussion starter. Sometimes they come to us saying, do you want to do this? So the charity contacts us, said, yes, we can do it. And then they start talking to the donor about what else they have and what else they're trying to do for that charity. Sometimes the conversation then flips. And we did one for it came in as an initial discussion on a $50,000 QCD last year for a hospital foundation, turned into a $250,000 CGA funded with highly appreciated Apple stock. They had a bigger problem over here with their Apple stock than they did with their IRA RMDs. So it opened that door, and guess what? That donor called the charity, said, can you do this for me? They weren't even on the development team's radar screen. That's the real benefit of Secure Act 2.0, is it's opening plan gift discussions that never have been opened otherwise, but they're certainly easy to do, obviously. We're just chagrined that there's such a small limited amount, and it's once in a lifetime, it's not annual.
Yeah,
once in a lifetime this year, so.
I agree. I've heard overall that it opens up to a lot of discussions for not only for QCDs, but for other things too. We're going to keep moving ahead here. So thank you to John and Rebecca, but we'll be back with them. But I just wanted to go over some next steps with you. So as you've listened to Bryan and John and Rebecca here, it's time to look at your gift acceptance policies. If you don't have one, make sure that your organization creates one. It's very important. But review that organization's gift acceptance policy. And if it does say, you know, we won't accept real estate, we're not going to issue gift annuities, maybe you can advocate for change. Maybe you can show your board of directors or CFO this webinar and other additional resources that that say, you know, we can accept it, but as Bryan was saying, we're going to go through this process in accepting these assets versus, you know, we're with like more liquid assets, like, you know, appreciated stock and cash, you know, this will be easily accepted. So it's just a, you know, it's just a way of making sure that your organization, you know, can accept these gifts, and it just may be a different route than what anyone had thought of. So I did want to just highlight some additional third-party resources for you. We've had Stelter clients who work with Realty Gift Fund. They deal exclusively with real estate, and they've done a great job with some of our clients. Cryptocurrency, the Giving Block is another organization you can work with. And then, you know, donor advised funds. I don't want to be remiss and not mention them, you know, whether it's commercial or, you know, other donor advised funds, but I've highlighted kind of the big four here of commercial donor advised funds, but they certainly accept a number of non-cash assets. So you can work with a commercial gift annuity, or excuse me, a commercial donor advised fund administrator, get that asset, transfer that asset is sold, the grant is made out to your organization. So don't forget about commercial donor advised funds, or even donor advised funds like a community foundation or other places. And some of our clients even have their own donor advised funds. So, so definitely another option for you. So I am going to get back everyone online here. And so let me start with, let's see, whoops, there we go. Rebecca, I'm going to start with you on the gift acceptance policy. We talked about this. There was a question that came in during the registration process, a gift acceptance policy for real estate. Who pays for the appraisal, environmental studies, and other expenses? Do you want to talk with that?
Sure, yeah. So the appraisal, we really have like a bright line rule, because the appraisal is for the donor's purposes. It is just for substantiating their charitable income tax deduction with the IRS. So we absolutely require that the donor pays for that. You know, historically, I used to have clients who would get pushback on that, but I honestly have never gotten pushback on that. For the due diligence, we will certainly ask the donor if they are willing to pay for it. Usually the amount that they're saving would so far offset the $1,500 for a phase one environmental or something, that, you know, sometimes they're willing, but we also usually end up paying that and then reimbursing ourselves from the proceeds. So it really is an organization by organization choice. You know, again, how often are your gifts restricted, where the money's going to have to come from a different pot? Is that pot there? You know, can you take it out of the proceeds? Those sorts of things. If you're a community foundation where the money's ultimately going to really carry on elsewhere, then you probably want to be reimbursing yourself from the proceeds.
Okay. Another question, I'm going to send this one to John. Does the Dachemai and National Gift Annuity Foundation let the receiving charity know the future gift will come?
Oh yeah, that kind of goes back to our process. Of course, we don't need to notify them. They were involved from the beginning. They helped set the donor up with the gift annuity. It's not like, yeah, you gave them our 800 number and they called us and you never heard from us again. Technically, we'll do that. That happens like 1 out of 100 times. So the answer is there's no need to notify, because you're right in the middle of the process. We keep you in the process for that donor relationship.
Okay. I'm going to send this one to Bryan. At what estimated value does it make sense to accept the non-cash asset? And are there non-cash assets that should not be considered?
I'll do the second part because those are more fun. So we always say no timeshares, stop with timeshares, nothing that eats but consumes food, that's not good. Almost always nothing with a steering wheel. So cars, boats, planes all fall into the vehicle rules. Very challenging. I've done this 32 years. I don't think I've ever done one vehicle, and I get that question monthly. And then no cemetery plot. So there are lots of these things that just they come up a lot because the donor can't get rid of these things him or herself anyway. And I hate to say that they're just sort of using the charity as a dumping ground. I'm sure they're not doing that on purpose, but that's sort of what that becomes. And if the donor can't sell it, I love you all, you can't sell it either. So that's sort of on the things not to sort of take in. In terms of the minimum size, that's really, and Lynn, you know this well, and certainly Rebecca too, that's really across the board a bit. At least for us, we tend to live in that sort of, for non-cash outright gifts and including CRTs, in that sort of 500,000 to 10 million range is sort of very much a sweet spot. Had one last year, it was 240 million, so they can be really big too. But most are in that sort of 500,000 to $10 million range. We can go sort of maybe that 200, 250 if it's like real clean and quick. So we just did like a Chicago condo. The tenant was there. Thankfully, they were pre-approved. We had held it for maybe 60 days. So like, okay, that's different versus, you know, something else that would not be sort of that easy. So I would say that 250 to 500 maybe. But very, very importantly for many of you as direct service charities, if you were to take in one that's maybe a piece of real estate that sells pretty fast for 75,000 or 100,000, when that sells, you get all 100,000. When it sells with us, at least on our average fee, is about 1.5%. So you can see it's a little bit of a delta there. So if we do one for 100,000, we get $1,500 theoretically, versus you get 100,000. So your minimums may be much lower, as they should be, to the extent that you're comfortable taking some of these in, if you're able to use basically the entire gift versus just being a pass-through entity. So I hope that helps.
Yeah, it does. And I think that kind of leads into the next question. So Bryan, I'm going to stay with you here. What are the top 3 asset gift sources where ROI is worthwhile for everyone involved? And I think business.
Yeah, and I think it really goes to that, Lynn, as you
Yeah.
already know. So the business interests by far, they tend to be the largest. Then I would think too, obviously the real estate side. And then we have been doing a lot of crypto. Now again, our crypto tends to be a bit larger too, maybe 800,000 to 1 million, which is quite large. We don't do that many transactions, maybe 12, 15, 2 years ago, or actually last year's maybe 12 to 15, sort of in that range. But in terms of ROI, it's much more a function, as we all know, of, you know, what is the risk, how much time is involved on the front end, how much time is involved once the dog sort of catches the car, and then how long are you going to actually have to manage, maintain? Are you paying the expenses? Is the donor paying the expenses in terms of additional contributions? And then what is sort of the net that comes out of the end? So each one obviously is a little bit of a different function, but at least on our side, it needs to be usually a little bit larger, at least 250,000, and for those types of assets.
Okay. And then Rebecca, we actually had a couple questions here about artwork. And what happens, you know, the donor gives artwork or maybe some other collectible to a nonprofit. How can the nonprofit maybe resell that, or maybe can community foundations or charitable solutions get involved with that process even before maybe it's been donated? So let's take the first scenario, that it's already been donated to the nonprofit. How can they then resell it? Are there resources out there so that they can basically get the cash?
So in our case, we've always worked with donors who are very connected to the art world and used their resources. So, you know, our donor has his own art agent. We, of course, do our own research, you know, make sure that they're reputable and have a good, you know, all the things, the fees are consistent with what we find. But, you know, we haven't had to do a whole lot of research ourselves. We have I've reached out to the local art museum, right, and asked them what they would suggest. They've given me like attorney referrals who work with a lot of art. So I think, you know, local art charities that can serve as a partner, but I think your donor's often going to be your best resource. And when you use their professionals, it can help just kind of smooth the bumps if they're not happy with the sale price or various things. They'll know that, you know, that they also had a hand in that ultimate sale price and what happened.
Okay. Okay, I am going to switch over to Jen to see if there's any questions that came in during the webinar. Jen?
Yeah. We actually had a lot of questions come in, and Bryan, thank you very much, has been doing a lot of work behind the scenes and has answered most of them. So, yeah, if you haven't had time to look through them, Bryan has answered most of them. And I think what I'll actually do, because we are getting close on time, is I will download these questions and answers and send them out to the group along with the link to the recording and the handout, so everyone has a chance to look through the answers. There's just a couple that he hasn't addressed yet. It's still dealing with real estate. Someone wants to donate their farm, but they don't want to do it before they die. So what are the best practices for accepting a gift like that? Any ideas?
You want to take that one, Rebecca, or I can maybe jump in, but
Go ahead. Yeah, please.
okay,
Bryan.
thanks. Maybe thanks, I don't know. So these are real tricky. We get this call a fair amount, and generally donors are trying to firm up what their testamentary disposition is for real estate or other illiquid assets. And their attorneys obviously are developing the documents to allow them to do that. The huge challenge is they want us or others to say, look, we need to know that you're going to take this real estate, because we're basically trying to make sure that the whole estate's going to be sort of fully distributed and there won't be any complications to the executor or trustee or whomever. And all of you know, whatever your real estate looks like today may be different in a week, maybe different in a year, maybe different in 10 years. So at least for us, we are not able to, in essence, preemptively guarantee that we're going to take in real estate or anything else, because we have no idea what that is going to be in the future. So typically what we do, and I think other community foundations do this as well, let Rebecca maybe chime in briefly, is to have kind of a very, very flexible testamentary language that basically says, it is my wish for this piece of real estate to end up at XYZ University. And here are maybe 2 or 3 partner charities. If that university is not willing or able to take that directly, they could be in 5 or 6 years. Like, okay, great, then give it directly to them. But if they come back and they go, no, we still don't want to take that real estate, then they can include maybe 2 or 3 organizational names in the testamentary documents and allow the trustee or executor the discretion on who best to use to be able to get the eventual gift to that university in some form. And so I like to include maybe 2 or 3 different names, and then even include some broader caveat that says, or any other similar charity that might exist at that time that the executor or trustee may choose to use to have that real estate go to that group before it goes to the university. If you don't do that, and we were to otherwise disclaim that real estate, as many of you know, then that goes through law, sort of disclaimed assets back through heirs, or you've got to go back to the court to actually have some amendment. That is not a 10-minute and $10 process. So I tend to like to say, keep it crazy flexible, sort of put the plumbing in that you think will occur, but if not, you've got some additional discretion for the trustee or the executor. So that's the issue of, how can they be sure it's going to the charity when the charity can't guarantee that they can accept it.
Great. Thank you so much, Bryan. And Lynn, I'm just going to go ahead and jump in here. We are out of time. We want to make sure we respect your time. If there are questions, there were just a couple we didn't get to live. The rest of them, Bryan did answer while he was behind the scenes. So I will provide those to you all in an email that I'll send out with the link to the recording and the handouts. If there's something that has come up for you that you're wondering about, you can reach out to any of our panelists. Their names and their email addresses are on the screen. They're willing to speak with you about that. And again, these will be in the PDF of the handouts when I send that out to you. So if you don't have time to jot it down right now, you'll have that chance tomorrow. And you can also reach out to me if you have any additional questions. And if you'd like to know more about Stelter, visit us at stelter.com. And just a last reminder, everyone wants to know, yep, we do have the recording. We will have the PDF of the handouts and the questions and answers that came in throughout the webinars. And you can visit us at stelter.com/webinars to view our library of webinars. So with that said, Lynn, I'm going to go ahead and pass it off to you to say goodbye and thank you to everyone.
Thank you, Jen, and thank you for doing all the behind the scenes work to make these Stelter webinars come to life. Thank you to my panelists, Rebecca, Bryan, Johnne. You were awesome today. Just a wealth of experience. So please, if you have additional questions, reach out to them. Again, thank you for joining us, and we hope to hear from you soon.
Bye-bye.